for education on the theme that is Ompulira. Good morning once again, and of course we know the mood is high, the spirit is high as we prepare for the consecration of the new, that is Archbishop of the Catholic Church. And on the same day is the day for International Education, a day when we are celebrating, that is the International Day of Education globally. And here on UBC, we are going to be having an international conference via Zoom, where we are going to be speaking to various speakers internationally, world over, on the face of education and the way forward, more so at such a time when the pandemic has crippled this sector. And for us in Uganda, we've just reopened, full reopening of the education sector. I'm not alone, I'm with the Peace Ambassador, Milton Kambula. Milton, you're most welcome to our studios.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. The world, I can see on our system more than 11 million people following online globally, but also in Africa. I congratulate everyone, all the stakeholders. Yes, we are making trains. We are making the win. International in the Education Day is very important for us. And I think the theme is very clear, re-imaging education and the future of the world. So we are at it again.
We are at it again. We are going to be joined by a number of speakers via Zoom. We'll be having, that is the Minister for Public Service, and also that is Acting Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs in the Republic of Uganda, that is Honorable Muruli Mukasa. But we'll also be having a representative that is from the United States of America, representing Dr. Tony Devine, a PhD holder, a person who has written a number of books and a consultant in the field of education. Back home, we shall have Mrs. Carol Kavuma, who is the coordinator of the unit, and also we shall have Okiria Martin, Obore National Chairperson, Association of Private School Head Teachers in Uganda, to give us more also in this sector, the way forward and how best we can maneuver. We shall have Ismael Mulindwa, who is the Director, Basic and Secondary Education in the Republic of Uganda. This is a sector, like I said, that has just opened barely a month. How best are we going to look at issues regarding SOFs? And of course, Mike Kironde, who happens to be, that's the National Chairman, Owners of Private School Institutions Association in Uganda. Milton,
yes, sir.
Briefly before we go to our first speaker via Zoom, let's look at the theme of this conference. At a time like this, we are talking about re-imaging education for peace and development. Many people have said this is a must if you are to go any further.
And you are right. And of course, the United Nations chose this day as, of course, from the mandate of the United Nations as a resolution saying that every 24th, of course, we are joining today as Uganda, must be put aside to allow the whole world join hands and celebrate education efforts. The theme for this year basically is talking about re-imaging education, using different lenses and seeing the value of education differently because of course, the disruptions, because of COVID-19, and those experts seeing the future and how it could be more disastrous. They are saying, no, we have to actually start prioritizing education so that education unlocks our potential as individuals, as nations of the world, to allow people predict what's going on, projecting the future, the dynamics of business, the projections in terms of technology, and how we must harvest our natural resources to make the world a prosperous and peaceful place to live in. That's the baseline. But unfortunately, of course, we still have bottlenecks to do with quality, to do with enrollment and completion ratio. We are still looking at equity education education equity gaps, financing gaps. The big nations called the United States, for example, the Germany, Canada. The question is, are they still providing the 1.5 of their contribution towards developing nations to transform the education?
Well, literally anyone would say education is a catalyst to development. An educated nation definitely expect that the population there would be able to develop. But I want us to focus on the element of peace. How are we factoring in education in terms of peace? Because Africa, day by day, we are making strides in the education sector. But unfortunately, when it comes to peace, coups, modern coups are becoming coups. When we look at riots, civil disobedience are dominating the world despite the high levels of civility and education. So the element of peace is one I want us to look at.
Of course, as a chapter president of Global Peace Foundation, the biggest organization dealing in managing peace around the world, I must say that unfortunately, as much as developed countries have achieved rapid industrial growth and development, such a super economic nation, but even then our developing nations, the same as we are crippling with our visions, but the issue is the education of the world. Based on the records right now at hand, we have failed to actually integrate the component of shared vision, shared values, universal principles. These are very pertinent milestones to enable learners, deliver or demonstrate the culture of tolerance, the culture of then saying, yes, even if I passed first class, I think that's not enough if all my colleagues have failed an exam. But look, the competition in the classroom shows you what happens when they graduate. So we see now more educated people are the ones corrupt, you know what I'm talking about. We are looking at graduates with first class are the ones crippling the economy because of corruption, because they are stealing public resources. We are looking at how education can unite and break the barriers of these borders, Uganda, Rwanda, Kenya. That nonsense should get out. After all, the scrum and petition of Africa of 1884, 85, that vision cannot work in our century. So education must unite Africa so that Africa can actually achieve its full potential. Must also help us stabilize the families, because the families, we understand that when families are crippled, there is no world peace. So we must at least somehow transform the curriculum, transform education policy system, transform
peace.
Exactly, suiting peace.
Talk about suiting peace, that is well explained by you. But now I want to look at the element of education. Many a times when we come back to Africa, this being an international day, our education has been criticized for having more job seekers than job creators. Much as every graduation, people are told, go and be job seekers. But actually what they have attained cannot enable them to be the job seekers we are talking about. We've revised our curriculum, not only because of COVID, but the lower secondary was revised recently, about 2 years back, before COVID came in. How are we tailor-making our education system to suit the desired vision for Africa?
You know, I've been saying that a nation that has a bright future must have educational experts who can predict the expected changes in the future. Now, this is what is the problem. The problem is that African countries have not brought these think tanks, experts, who can talk and organize and see and bring closer the future. Now, if our problem is basically identity-based conflict, for example, youth unemployment, failure to utilize and explore our natural resources to benefit the local people and the local economy, from being a donor recipient to donor giving nation. Therefore, education must therefore be crafted towards preparing this generation to walk in the future dynamics. And so we now see students being examined on cramming notes. They are cramming. Jesus was born on the birthday of Jesus. That's what they are studying. The birthday of the first king too. So they are not learning how to use the available natural resources to create wealth. And so that's why, other than learning the parts of an insect, we can allow the teacher to organize and make learners understand that a cockroach has proteins, which is demanded by the world market. And so they can harvest cockroaches, they can harvest grasshoppers for value addition and packaging to the rest of the world. So we make sure learners learn agriculture not in the classroom, but learn agriculture by going to the field, by going to the market to understand how money is made, and so they can become billionaires even before they reach the age of 20. Because COVID alone has made more rich people in China than ever before. Because more problems means more opportunities for innovators to create innovative solutions to make their countries rich.
Milton, how do we get to this? Because I've been looking at a number of curriculums across Africa. I've been reading through almost part of the night to analyze so much on this day. But one thing I've come to accept, even Uganda as a country, that even when we try to make these changes, still he who pays the piper determines the tune. Look at most of the UNESCO, all these you follow, even the curriculums, all African countries, not basically for Uganda. China doesn't do that. Asia doesn't do that. They came up with something tailor-made for them. That where does China want to go? Come to Uganda. We are not getting to that level where we can craft, draft our very own and understand that, yes, we have so many problems, and this is the best way to go to this.
So you are really touching the tail of the problem. The tail of the problem is exactly colonial education curriculum system that was adopted as a result of our kings losing leadership capacity. They betrayed Africa by handing over all these rich nations to the foreign man, whose intentions was to make sure they brainwash the Africans to believe that they are weak and they are destined to serve the superior race. So they lost their cultural system, their religions, even their economy, their talents, their innovations. So we have to redefine. That's why I like this vision, this theme of this year, where nations are giving us opportunity to re-image education so that we craft it towards achieving our nation's vision, not the visions of our friends abroad.
Well, Milton, I'll be getting back to you, but right now we are joined by the Honorable Minister for Public Service and also now Constitutional Affairs, Honorable Muruli Mukasa. Honorable Minister, it is a great pleasure to have you today on this special day. Good morning. Good morning. Honorable, we know that you have been a minister for some time, a teacher by profession, but can you hear me, Honorable?
I'm getting you loud and clear.
Okay. Well, on such a day when we are celebrating, that is the International Day for Education, more so on a theme that is re-imaging, that is our education systems for peace and development. What do you have to say as a head teacher for some time? You're in this education sector, and I believe you greatly understand it.
Well, I just have a few things to say. First of all, to everybody organizing this commemoration, the leadership of the Global Peace Foundation, the management of the UBC, the education development partners, and the education fraternity in general, all over the globe, esteemed parents, teachers, students, the civil society, the media, and ladies and gentlemen. Well, today is very important because Uganda joins the rest of the world to commemorate this year's International Day of Education. And a very, very important theme changing course, transforming education. And of course, in our context, we have recast this theme to focus on re-imaging education for peace and development, teacher-student resilience, and of course call for quality education service delivery, amidst the challenges which we have. So it's an important day when we focus on education and get time to reflect on it so that we can use education as a tool for peace and development. Without really inclusive and equitable quality education, which should provide lifelong opportunities for all, in addition to moral and innovative leadership, so that we can have a good partnership in education, there will definitely be no transformation, and countries will certainly not succeed in achieving all the good things which we need to achieve, like gender equality, breaking the cycle of poverty, and then making sure that everybody is included. The UNESCO report today says that 258 million children and youth still do not attend school globally, adding to the 617 million children and adolescents who unfortunately cannot read and do basic mathematics. Less than 40% of the girls in sub-Saharan Africa complete lower secondary school, while 4 million children and youth refugees are out of school due to conflicts and wars in their countries of origin. All these children, their right to education is being violated, and it is unacceptable because they cannot afford to achieve their full potential, both in the public and the private sector. So today's commemoration or today's celebration is a very important opportunity for us, first of all, to showcase the most important transformation in education sector, to dialogue on how to achieve a more sustainable, inclusive education sector, how we can have even a peaceful future, to generate debate around the world, to strengthen education as a public endeavor, as a public common good, and more important, as a fundamental human right. It also gives us an opportunity to examine and deepen digital transformation within the education sector, support teachers and students to become resilient amidst the global challenges and disruptions. Of course, it is an opportunity for us to call for quality education amidst the challenges like COVID pandemic, and also use education to safeguard our planet against the impact or the negative impact of climate change. We also need to demand for transformed education assessment and outcomes that unlock the potential in every person to contribute to the economic, political, social, cultural, and technological developments in the country and in the world. Of course, we also need to deepen the universal primary education, universal secondary education, and all the mechanisms that have been put in place in our country especially to ensure that these programs are indeed universal, like district quota scholarships, both at university and in tertiary institutions, loan schemes to enable good, bright students to attain the education that they need, especially tertiary and university. We wish, of course, to commend the Ugandan government for increasing the national budget of education for our children. Now, education is among the top 3 sectors which are given a lot of money in our budget. We have also witnessed an increase in the number of schools and universities built by government, but also by the private sector. There are more schools and universities than we have ever had in the history of this country. We are also grateful for an education policy which ensures that we are going to have more children attaining education than, say, in the first 60 years of colonialism. So today, therefore, because of these milestone achievements, we have cause to celebrate the International Education Day. This year's theme,
Honorable Minister,
education, has been adopted. Yes, please.
You've talked about all these achievements, and truly speaking,
yes,
they are visible. But what remains a challenge is many educated people, yet not employable because they do not have the necessary skills to either start up or even what the job market wants. That is why we are still seeing a number of come into our country despite these tremendous achievements you've talked about. How do we get to that?
Well, true. The skills are still short, but government has responded by establishing technical schools at lower levels, but also short-term courses for people, for instance, who have been to university but require practical skills. So short-term courses are available both at the university and in the technical schools to equip those young people who have been out of university with the necessary lifelong and trade skills which they need to create to go into the job market. True, there isn't enough employment, particularly in the public service, to absorb all the graduates of our schools, of our universities and technical schools. However, government is responding with a very appropriate policy, that is of making sure that, first of all, skills are provided. Secondly, some capital is provided, both financial and otherwise, to people who would like to create employment for themselves, but also at the same time employ their fellow countrymen. So we have, for instance, the parish development model. This one is targeting the common person, both in the parish, but also we have now another model called a myoga. In other words, a set of job activities for people, for instance, who are a little bit higher. And what government is doing, in addition to providing skills, is to provide the necessary capital which is required by those people in those organizations to establish the jobs, run them very well along commercial and profitable lines. So this mix of policy and action is likely to, in the long run, to ensure that the issue of job creation or the issue of jobs for our school leavers will now become something of history.
Honorable Minister, I'll be getting back to you. Let me also have a number of speakers globally that are attending this conference as we look at the International Day of Education that we have celebrated here in Uganda today. And like I told you earlier, we have a number of speakers from various parts of the world. We shall be having, that is Honorable, Juma Omondi, who is representing Dr. Tony Devine from the United States of America, Department of Education, but also a consultant there. Doctor, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Well, Honorable Muruli Mukasa has given us a detailed shot on what we are doing as a country and, of course, some of the challenges. But from your own perspective, what are some of these key bottlenecks that have to be fixed for education to achieve the theme of today, which is peace and development?
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. My name is Daniel Juma. I'm the Country Director of the Global Peace Foundation in Kenya, and I'm happy today to represent my Vice President, Dr. Tony Devine, who was to be with you here, but he's not there today. Basically, on this International Day of Education, and I want to agree with some of the sentiments, of course, made by Honorable Muruli Mukasa. But in Africa, we have several bottlenecks that affect education in Africa. Most of that is structural, and as you know, and I've said earlier on, and being director of an organization that is involved in peace building, I have said before that research demonstrate that countries that have the highest level of illiteracy, are more prone to violence, and that's why our foundation focuses on education as a tool for peace building. But the bottlenecks, as you have asked to come to your question, are many. Mostly, infrastructure, financial. If you go to many of the schools in Africa, especially those areas that have been marginalized, especially like in Kenya, we have in the Turkana, those are places where we have little or no human development. And, so the inequality caused by lack of government in those areas have made it very difficult for those people to be able to access education. So lack of adequate infrastructure, lack of funding, is one of the main bottlenecks. Yeah, to answer your question.
Well, thank you so much for outlining some of those that really suit in the theme. For example, peace. There, when we see some of these areas where education is really becoming a challenge. Let me move to my third speaker this morning, who happens to be, that is the director for basic secondary education in our country, Uganda, that is Ismael Mulindwa. We're at a time when we've had COVID-19 really rip the education sector, and we saw a number of schools closed. At such a time now, how best do we ensure that students remain in school and our schools are opened? Let me first ensure if I'm with my guest. Dr. Mulindwa, are you with us? Ismael Mulindwa, are you with us? Can you hear me? Well, I think there's some technology that has to be fixed there, but I'll also be returning to most of my speakers.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm with you.
Good morning to you.
Good morning.
And thank you so much for being part of us this morning as we look at the International Day of Education and, of course, on the theme Reimaging the Education Sector for Peace and Development. Now, you're in charge of basic and secondary education in Uganda. And the biggest question now is, with the effect of COVID-19 on this sector, how best are we going to ensure that we maintain schools opened and also save the lives or prevent massive outbreak of such a disease in these education institutions?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues from the Global Peace Foundation, UBC, viewers out there. I want to say good morning once again. I want to thank the previous speakers, including the Honourable Minister, who have given a preamble to our discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, we all know Minister of Education has been, if I can say, the most affected sector in the country, because the impact may not be just short, but it could even be generational. So what can be done to have the learners in school and safely? Ladies and gentlemen, we need to know that whatever we are doing it in the framework of the guidelines that are given by Ministry of Health. So by that, of course, we ensure that there is a safety of our learners in education institutions. That's very critical. Before you think of equity, quality education, our learners have to be safe first of all. So that's very, very important that we adhere to the SOPs. But that said, ladies and gentlemen, and our viewers, we need to appreciate the fact that when the pandemic came in, we didn't just hold our hands. As a sector, we immediately came up with a plan on how to, first of all, ensure there is a continuity of learning of our learners wherever they were, and two, to also prepare for reopening of the education institutions. I mean, when they were closed in 2020. And the third, to ensure resilience of the sector and the human capital within the sector going forward. So as a ministry, what we need to do, we have done, and some of the things we are doing in preparation for reopening and ensuring our learners stay in school is, first of all, to look at the teacher component, because it's very critical. It's the teacher who is going to manage these learners at school level. It's the teacher who is going to teach them. So we thought we needed to make some prior preparations in terms of preparing the teacher, both mentally and on the pedagogical aspect. So we looked at the psychosocial aspect of the teacher. We looked at his capacity to manage the curriculum and to also manage the pandemic itself. Because the fact is, we shall have cases in schools. So how are they managed? Then again, the whole thing rotates around the teacher. So we had some training on psychosocial aspect. We had training on the pedagogical, and as you know, we even went ahead to reorganize our curriculum to come up with an abridged version so that we can redeem the lost time and our learners cover what they are supposed to cover. So we came up with an abridged curriculum, and our teachers had to be prepared on this curriculum, which we did. And we also trained them on surveillance, on how they can be able to manage this pandemic. So these are some of the things that have been done to ensure our teachers, first of all, come back, which is very critical. 2 years has not been a short time. Definitely. But also ensure that they are able to remain in school and manage our learners. To the learners, again, a similar kind of intervention is on. The first week when schools reopened, we guided our teachers down there in the schools to make sure the learners are not bombarded in 2 classrooms. No, they should have been prepared mentally so that they are able to now switch to the classroom situation. You know, they have been exposed to quite a number of things out there. So when they come back to school, they need also to be prepared so they can be able to achieve their intended objective.
Well, thank you for now. That is Ismael Mulindwa. That is also Director Basic and Secondary Education, Ministry of Education and Sports, giving us how prepared they are to ensure that we retain students in school after a 2-year closure. We'll be getting back to you, Mulindwa, shortly. But now you talked about the element of teachers, and let me now get a word from, that is Mrs. Carol Kavuma, who happens to be the teacher coordinator of Uganda National Institute of Teacher Education, that aims at ensuring that they improve the quality of education, the quality of students, to enable they have the competency required for the 21st century. Madam Carol, are you with us? Madam Carol?
Yes, I'm with you. I'm with you.
A lovely morning to you.
Lovely morning. Thank you very much, presenter, and for all the prior speakers on this topic.
Well, before that, is there a way that I can be able to see you visually? I'm getting your audio, but actually I'm not getting the visual part of it. Maybe to improve on your settings a bit?
Well, I've switched on my video, but I don't know why it doesn't show. I switched it on.
Okay, we'll go with that as you work upon the improvements
Probably.
there. But let me begin by first of all congratulating you upon this new office that is aimed at improving teacher competency for us to get the right products out of our education sector that have the 21st competences for a child. How are you going to handle this task? Hello?
Hello.
Yes, how are you going to handle this task? Because we really need children or products from school that can fairly compete in the 21st century, where we are seeing a number of dynamics that require competent people, and this sometimes has been criticized of our education system.
Yeah, thank you very much, presenter. I would like to start by thanking the Global Peace managers for inviting us to make a contribution and to talk about International Day of Education on the theme of reimagining education for peace and development. As a unity that are coming up, we are quite on this theme. Why? Because we are focusing on rebranding the teacher and reimaging that teaching profession in the country. We know where we've flowed, we know where we've not been performing well, and UNITA is here to assure the country that we are coming back to the scene, that teachers are coming back to ensure that children are now secure and skilled. Now, getting back to answer the question that you've asked about getting the children skilled, first of all, we are going to skill ourselves.
Okay.
The teachers are going to skill themselves, and in our curriculum development for teacher education, we've put a lot of emphasis on trying to put all the ingredients that are going to make the teacher again back to the scene of being the one in charge of all the other professions and being able to manage the child in a way that is going to make Uganda grow. As I said some time back, we normally, when we train teachers, if you want to see a skilled child, the teacher should train the child, and when the children go back home, they should be able to implement what the teacher has taught them right on that day. So I would like to go back to that product-driven education.
Well, I'll apologize for now. Madam Carol Kavuma, I think the issues with your network, but we hope that will be rectified. In the meantime, allow me move to now the teacher that you've just talked about, rebranding this teacher, skilling this teacher with skills to person, because you can only give what you have. If we cannot have a good student, if the teacher is not rebranded, doesn't match up with the 21st century competency. So here I want to bring in, that is Mr. Tuliagenda, Jimmy, who happens to be, that is the headmaster of Untale Senior Secondary School. And we look at this teacher. How best is the teacher positioning himself, herself to suit for this? That is Mr. Tuliagenda. Jimmy, if you're with us, on this Zoom conference that we are holding here on the International Day of Education on the theme, Reimaging Education for Peace and Development. I just love this theme, peace and development. How do we reimage this sector? Mr. to the agenda. Mr. to the agenda. Still waiting for Mr. to the agenda to give us that experience, of course. But if not there, as per now, allow me now move to people that most of the times we've had them craving, crying that we are the private sector. We are doing a noble cause and we need assistance here and there. And no better person this morning to represent them than Mr. Kironde Mike, who is the National Chairperson of Proprietors of Private Education Institution Association of Uganda. People that are running the education sector from the private perspective. Mr. Kironde, are you with us this morning? Okay, I think Mr. Kironde is trying to find a way of getting with us. But allow me now get to the man who has written a book. That is Milton Kambula, regarding competency of the 21st century, how best we can impact this on our children. Milton,
yes.
We've had the various speakers. I was very touched by rebranding the teacher.
Yes.
This is something that the ministry has woken up to and understood. Mrs. Kavuma heading that section. How best? Because you can only give what you have. When you blame the students, they're not. That means the teachers have something they're not doing right.
One, I thank Honorable Muruli Mukasa. Honorable Muruli Mukasa, as you know, has another appointment. I thank His Excellency the President for actually according him another responsibility as Minister
for Justice and Constitutional Affairs.
Exactly. And you know, education, he said in his speech, of course, he's coming back. He said something very important. Education as a fundamental human right. That is a very big statement. And drawing it down and relating it with Madame Kavuma, Carol, who says, she said, rebranding the teacher. These are very serious statements. And I believe the viewers are getting value out of this conference. Now, let me come to my own perspective. For the last 120 years, when these colonial men and women came here, these are too many years. You know, tying someone for those years means something. My colleagues, you know what I'm talking about. Because look, the education outcomes remained stagnant for the last 120 years. It means schools are continuing to churn out learners who only look for jobs. Let us just focus on that. Just tying the country and the continent to just continue surviving on imports, not using their locally available resources to build their clothes, to build their own, to make their own shoes, to make their own food, you know, to enjoy the talents God has given them. But 120 years, these are serious years, just surviving. So our way forward would mean actually making those what we call revolutionary efforts which are radical towards education, so that learners only learn that is important to bring food on the table. That is why my book, which is coming, Nurturing a Competent African Child, Volume 2, is looking at preparing every African man and woman to be able to understand the future of Africa. Africa is the next big thing. And so we need to industrialize. But then we cannot industrialize using foreign inputs. You can imagine foreign inputs, including what are we doing, what are we adding in the bottled water, apart from even our chicken in these restaurants are imported.
And so, at that level, Milton, yes, well said. I believe now that is Jimmy Tuliagenda, the headmaster and Tari Senior Secondary School, is with us, and we want to still get more regarding that is the teacher. The teacher being able to position themselves at a time when they can pass on the skills that Milton, that is Minister for Public Service talked about, and of course the previous speakers have talked about. Good morning, Mr. Headmaster.
Good morning, everybody.
We are excited to have you on this important
Thank you so much. My name is Tuliagenda Jimmy, head teacher at Tari School. Secretary General, the Association of Secondary School Head Teachers of Uganda, Education. But the most important thing is that I'm a teacher. Sorry, I lost some part of the meeting because of network. So I think the moderator may help me talk about a few things. But that notwithstanding, I thought I could briefly tell you about what we think we should do as headers and what we've done. First of all, I want to thank the government of Uganda for again opening the schools, and also to observe and thank the government again because the lockdown was worth it. I want to thank the president for thinking, because some people have always said, why did we lock? The truth is we couldn't continue schools because the situation was so tough. So I want to thank the government. I want to thank my godfathers, our friends like Mr. Mulindwa, who is always chairing our COVID task force in the ministry, for coming up and guiding us. So as an association, we are structured in the 13 administrative regions of Uganda, and we are so many, more than 4,000. So for us, our vision is United for Professional and Quality School Leadership. Then our mission is to unify members and provide a forum for quality education and exchange of ideas and practices national and international. So for us as head teachers, you know, most people don't know, but teachers, teaching is actually a calling. It's a calling and a vocation, from the Latin word vocare. So for us as head teachers and teachers for that matter, when we opened, we have had several meetings. First of all, even with the ministry, I want to thank our PS who has always allowed us to meet, our commissioners. And so for us, we are now in business. We know after the lockdown, there is a lot to be done. And most of the work is psychological. We decided and we have met and talked and said that the head teachers and the teachers for that matter must make sure that the students are actually told to settle down, because this is not the first time education shut down. It has ever been done, even
Mr. Tuliagenda.
The First World War, Second World. And so for us, what we, yes, please.
The biggest question here is, the biggest question now here is not only seeing students practically in school, but ensuring that we come up with a well-packaged student ready to face the job market and the challenges of the 21st century. So as teachers, how prepared are you to offer the world that desired student?
Okay, I think that's very important. If you look at what we are looking at and come and look at what the government has done and what we are doing, I wanted, for example, to talk about the lower curriculum. This curriculum and the packaging now in the education sector is that we just don't teach for the sake of it, but we look at the skills, the teaching of skills, creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, because as you rightly observe, the education sector sometimes we are thinking of just teaching and getting students and learners with academic papers only. But now, if you look at the lower curriculum, that emphasizes creativity, negotiation, design. When you look at how we have embraced it, I have a feeling that we are going to come up with products that are going to be quite helpful. Some people may not know, but with this lower curriculum, we stop at 3 in the afternoon. And after that, we go to projects. Most schools have come up with very good projects. And students, for the first time, are coming up with creativity. For instance, if you look at our school, quite a very big school, we have the privilege of channeling out the best learners, the best OBs, even in this region. But we have projects. We have divided, for instance, the banana plantation into a very huge banana plantation of 70 acres. But classes have got their part, which they work on. You come up with projects like piggery. You know,
so it's basically ensuring, it is basically ensuring that we have hands-on, so that when these students finally leave school, they have the skills to set up something. Well, I'll be returning to you, Mr. to the agenda, but in the interest of time, let me just have a final or parting shots from each of the speakers that we've had this morning on this International Day of Education, and on the theme Reimaging Education for Peace and Development. And I'll begin with the Honorable, that is a Minister for Public Service and Constitutional Affairs, a man who is very passionate about education. He has taught in schools in Uganda. He has been a headmaster as well. That is Honorable Muruli Mukasa. Honorable Minister.
Yes, please.
Thank you for keeping it with us.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the contributors to this platform. Very, very wonderful, very good. We are very happy indeed that we are celebrating the International Education Day today. We are also very happy that the government of Uganda has taken education as one of the key sectors in the country that should actually point in the right direction, providing skills and employment, but also causing or being a catalyst to development. Finally, making sure that education is creating peace, the very much peace which we need, so that we can actually now embrace the development agenda.
Thank you so much.
We are very happy for this. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for blessing this conference, and of course for the hope to Ugandans that we are moving in the right direction. A representative of Dr. Tony Devine, who happens to be Honorable Juma Omondi. Are you with us, Honorable? And can we have your parting shot?
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. Again, I want to congratulate you and everybody else in Uganda, for organizing this conference. And as I said earlier on, I'm representing Dr. Devine, and I had mentioned earlier on that as a foundation, we have, continued to be able to emphasize that education is the best tool that you can use to change the world. And Africa has the youngest population in the world. Uganda has the youngest population actually in Africa. And I was very, very sad that Uganda closed schools for almost 2 years. I'm happy now that schools have been open in Uganda, and that students can go back to school. And that's one of the reasons that I really wanted to speak here, so that I can congratulate President Museveni and the government of Uganda for opening schools. I have said earlier on that we should never, ever again close schools, pandemic or no pandemic. We must be able to let our children learn whatever. And that's one of the reasons why, as a foundation, we've been talking about how do we ensure that we have a dual system of education, physical and online.
Very interesting. That is physical and online, and never to close schools again. That is calling for 21st century competences in how best we can execute or carry on with education. Thank you so much for being with us, Honorable Juma Omondi, who has been representing, that is Dr. Tony Devine from the United States of America. Well, I'll come now to the person in charge of basic and secondary education in the Ministry of Education and Sports, Dr. Ismael Mulindwa. Are you still with us?
Yes.
Doctor, in less than a minute, can I have your final word to Ugandans regarding this day and the education sector?
Okay, thank you, presenter. I just want to conclude my remarks by saying Ministry of Education and Sports is coming up with quite a number of reforms, and I want to say these are not incidental. They are meant to address the very concerns which have been raised by colleagues, like having an unskilled labor force and all that kind of thing. And the reforms, among others, include the curriculum reform, which has been talked about, the teacher reforms, the skills development reforms. All these are geared to re-imaging the teacher as an individual, first of all, but
well, a number of reforms there is the hope we've had from Dr. Ismael Mulindwa. Well, we apologize. Doctor, your network is not that very good, but thank you so much for your time. Finally, let me have the headmaster Antale Senior Secondary School, that is Jimmy Tuliagenda, with his final remarks regarding this day. Mr. Tuliagenda.
Thank you so much. Just a quick correction, that is not a secondary school, it's in that school. But that is...
Thank you so much for that. Yes, let's have your final remarks, please.
On a serious note, it's okay. On a serious note, I wanted to thank you on behalf of the Association of Secondary School Teachers about this International Day of Education. It's very important to remind us, and especially when we are talking about the skills and talking about the fact that education is not just education per se, but it should come up with skills so that when we train a learner, he gets a job to do. I wanted to thank you, especially our Honorable Muruli Mukasa, our Minister, for some well-guided information. My friend, Mr. Mulindwa, for all that he has told us. So I shall take this information to our association. I was recording and taking notes about what we discussed, and I believe that in our next meeting, we shall communicate all this so that we embrace it and keep communicating.
Thank you so much for your time. That is Headmaster Ntare School, one of the oldest schools that, of course, has given the country many of these people that we celebrate today. We wish you the best there. Finally, Milton, we don't have so much time with us.
Just 1 second.
Just in a second, please.
Let's go join hands and celebrate the best schools like Ntare, having produced His Excellency Kagame, His Excellency Museveni, and those schools that are pioneering innovations, you know, character and good morals amongst our learners. But lastly, and the last statement I can say, education that is designed or implemented in any nation and cannot actually solve problems of that nation, such an education must be banned and put in the dustbin. So we need a revolutionary education that positions our children to start walking in the dynamics of a competitive and dynamic future. That is the future, and I thank Ministry of Education and Sports and all the departments, as ASHU, all these associations.
Well, Milton, thank you so much for having phone time, and of course, I want to thank the Global Peace Foundation for having spearheaded this conference that we've been having today via Zoom, aiming at ensuring that with more light regarding how best we are moving forward to promote peace and development in the education sector, but also impact skills that are needed for the 21st century. I want to thank all our guests we've been having, and of course, thank you, our viewer, for having stayed with us. Well, we'll continue, but don't forget that we'll be giving you all the event, that is of the consecration of the new Bishop for Kampala Archdiocese, and we'll be there. Remember, attendance is by invitation, but UBC will bring you this just on your phone, in your sitting room, wherever you are. So keep it with us and we'll give you full coverage of the entire function. Good morning.